Welcome to this layman's guide to becoming a full-stack developer in 2019, made by me, Alex Merced. Learn more about me over there at alexmercedcoder.com. I'm making this video because as I've watched several of the other videos and courses on YouTube as I train myself to become a full-stack developer, there are many things that I think would have been nice to be guided or things that are overlooked as far as details to tell someone who's thinking of starting this career path, and just giving sort of a nice overarching step-by-step path on what to learn and when to learn it. So let's start off by discussing what is a full stack. What does it mean to be a full stack web developer? Now there's basically a front end and a back end, and both of them together become the full stack. Now the front end stack, or the front end development part, is a part that happens on the client side. So basically this is like code that gets rendered by your client's browser that has to do with either your user experience, how they use your website, and the user interface, what they see. On the other hand, the back end has to do a lot with what happens on the web server, the server that is not your user's computer, not your client's computer. And here, basically, you're storing databases, manipulating information, creating APIs, so that way your front end can get the information from the back end and modeling that data. So that's usually done either in several different programming languages, using several different frameworks, but there's the front end and the back end. If you can do both, you're full stack. Now, to become ready to start a career in full stack web development, there are several steps on things you're going to need to learn. Such as the first step, of course, is actually learning the coding part. So learning all the different programming languages and HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and at least one other language as you prepare. But there's a lot more to being able to actually do the job than just knowing the language. There are several skills, tools, and soft skills that you need to be aware of. Part of it will be knowing the bash command line, which a lot of your work when you're dealing with servers will be on using the bash command line in different Linux servers. Learning about agile development and how projects are organized and broken up so that way you can accomplish tasks as a team. And you need to learn frameworks. So basically, once you learn the different programming languages and the languages, you need to learn the frameworks that are built on top of them that allow people to do all sorts of cool stuff. Once you've learned the frameworks, you've learned Agile and Bash and all this stuff, you need to build a portfolio. You need to show employers that you actually know how to put this stuff into practice. And using things like CodePen and GitHub, you'll be able to make a public portfolio that people can see, but you need to make sure you come up with unique projects, come up with unique problems that you try to solve to show people that you're able to put these tools to work. So once you learn the languages, once you learn the tools, you build a portfolio, then it's just a matter of getting a resume out there and applying for work and trying to find your first gig, which I highly recommend watching many of the other YouTubers who are more experienced in the industry to tell you about how they applied for their first job, some of the lessons learned on their first jobs. They're very useful experience you can learn from many of the other YouTubers on YouTube. The first step is to learn HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Honestly, one of the best tools I found for doing this is General Assembly's Dash website, which has like 5 free lessons that you can use. By completing, you'll actually learn CSS, HTML, and JavaScript. But I also recommend downloading the Solo Learn and Get Mimo mobile apps. The courses on these apps are really great, especially on your commute, but also for learning these basic foundational blocks. As you learn these tools, you're going to want to build your portfolio. And one of the tools you'll use to build that portfolio and also practice is CodePen, where you can kind of practice using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and see the results of what you're practicing in real time, and then use it as something you can point to as a portfolio. So go start a CodePen account, and as you learn these tools, make a few practice projects on CodePen so that way you can practice what you've learned. Once you've kind of learned the basic HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, it's time to start learning more tools that'll make you do more work faster and better. And one of those tools is Sass. It allows you to pre-compile style sheets, so that way you're not necessarily typing in the same styles over and over again, and you have all sorts of programmatic tools in creating your style sheets. So learn about Sass, find a course, and then you can practice Sass using CodePen, because you are allowed to use Sass on CodePen. Now, with your knowledge of CSS and Sass, you should be pretty comfortable styling a website on your own. But a lot of times, people use frameworks like Bootcamp and Materialize to be able to get to the point of designing their website and getting a functional, good-looking website quicker, because a lot of the stuff that you typically would do in styling is already done for you. So now it's time to learn Bootcamp and Materialize. Find some videos and then practice what you've learned on CodePen. So at this point, you know CSS, you know a lot of advanced styling techniques, but now you need to learn a framework, because basically most websites are built with one of three main front-end frameworks, especially a lot of the bigger companies. That's going to be Angular 2, which was made by Google, React, which is made by Facebook, and Vue.js, which isn't attached to any major name, but is a quickly growing framework and definitely one of the top three. So choose one and learn it well and practice it. As a bonus, a useful tool to learn to future-proof yourself is Stencil.js. This takes sort of a new approach to building single-page web applications. So unlike React, Angular, and Vue, where you create code within a framework and then that code is rendered real-time by the server, Stencil.js allows you to create sort of that framework-like coding ahead of time, pre-compile it into web standard code that can be imported and can be used within any project and any framework. Before we start moving away from the front end and into the back end, we're going to want to learn a couple tools and things you should really know that are going to be useful for working in teams and working for a company, and that's going to be Git and GitHub. That's basically a versioning tool for keeping track of versions of a software and knowing what changes were made, when those changes were made. And GitHub, which is a public repository to store those versions, and also learn about agile development, which is a style of working as a team to develop a project. So if you've learned and practiced everything I've talked to about this point, which can take anywhere, I would say, between three to 4 months, if you spend a lot of time, like we're talking about, like around minimum 1 or 2 hours a day studying, you should be at the point where you feel you can be comfortably and competently apply for front-end developer jobs. But you're not a full-stack developer yet. We need to learn the back end. So let's take a look at that. Now, if you're going to be learning full-stack web development, you need to learn what MVC is, Model View Controller. So look up some videos that explain what MVC development is. But in a gist, it's model, which means sort of how the data is structured and the kind of information that is going to be in your database. The view, how this information is displayed, so the visual aspect, the front-end aspect of it, and then the controller, how the user interacts with the information through your front end. So learn more. Since backend code is run by a server, not your client's computer, you're allowed to use pretty much any programming language you want. So basically, here's a list of many programming languages. Choose one and learn that language. And then over the next few pages, I'll list the popular web frameworks that go with each of those languages that would run on the server side for you to manage your database, create APIs, etc. Yeah. Now that you've learned one of the languages that was listed and one of the frameworks that goes with that language, it's now the time to create a full stack example project that uses everything you've learned, which means going on a server side, getting a backend installed to run one of these frameworks, so that way you can create sort of all that, the data models, the views, the routing, all that fun stuff. Then use one of the front-end frameworks, React, Vue, or Angular, to create a user interface to interact with that data and make the API calls to the APIs created on your backend to pull the information from the database and create a sort of a somewhat working project that you can show. And then if you really want to go the distance, you do this all on a server through like Linode or DigitalOcean and actually deploy it using a web server so people can actually access it online. If you do all that, then, well, you've learned sort of the full chain of creating a full stack project, because you're able to deploy the backend, model the data, create the APIs, access that data, and then create the front end, the website, the user experience that will then make API calls on that data and then deploy it via a web server. And if you can do that, then you can show that project to an employer and look like a solid choice to be added to the team. But at this point, you probably are at the... Thank you for watching this video. If you're an experienced developer, please feel free to add your advice and your suggestions in the comments. And if you have questions, add them in the comments. But you can follow me on GitHub, CodePen, and you can find all those links over there at alexmercedcoder.com. Thank you very much. Have a great day and enjoy.